Hello ladies and gentlemen, I am the Omni viewer, and now we've got some really big news for Godzilla vs. Kong. Well, first another quick little bit of news as far as casting goes. Japanese actor Shun Oguri has been added to the cast. Actually, I keep saying these actors have been added as if it's just happening, but really I don't have any evidence of that. We just know in what order they're being announced. Is it possible that they're being announced as they're being added? Yes, but then again, we don't necessarily know that that's the case. Either way, the most recently announced actor for this film is an actor who actually hails from Japan. Much like all of the other new cast members, we don't know anything about his roles, so let's just move on to the other bit of news. Now that Godzilla vs. Kong has begun shooting, the plot synopsis has been released. Well, that is to say, a kind of plot synopsis. Allow me to just read it to you. In a time when monsters walk the earth, humanity's fight for its future sets Godzilla and Kong on a collision course that will see the two most powerful forces of nature on the planet collide in a spectacular battle for the ages. As Monarch embarks on a perilous mission into uncharted terrain and unearths clues to the Titan's origins, a human conspiracy threatens to wipe the creatures, both good and bad, from the face of the earth forever. So that's all we know at this point. Obviously, it doesn't give too much away just yet. I have seen the way certain people have been reacting to it though, so I would like to address a couple of things. Consider this partial thoughts on the plot synopsis and partial rumor control, as I found myself having to do numerous times throughout this process. First of all, I've noticed quite a few people, I don't know how many, but certainly enough to be noticeable, reading this and jumping immediately to the conclusion that this definitely confirms Godzilla and Kong will team up by the end. This has occasionally resulted in gnashing of teeth and rending of clothes as people wail at the sky, "Oh no, it's going to be Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice all over again! Is there no justice in the world?" I mean, there are some people doing that. Some people are being a bit more reserved, but ultimately still having the same concerns. However, I am going to make this as clear as possible. There is absolutely nothing in this particular plot synopsis that says anything or gives any sort of hint that Godzilla and Kong will team up by the end. Here, this is the entire thing typed out for you in text form to read for yourself. Point to the part where it says Godzilla and Kong will team up by the end. I don't see it. Now, don't mistake me as saying I'm completely discounting the idea of Godzilla and Kong teaming up by the end. I'm just saying that based on this alone, there's no evidence to suggest it at this point. Not even the part about how there are good and bad monsters in the world really means anything. We've already known there are good and bad monsters from the start. Heck, I've already suggested a potential plot that would allow Godzilla and Kong to fight and remain enemies without compromising their status as good guys. But let's assume just for a moment that maybe they are going to team up. They fight each other for a little bit, but then something else happens that forces them to either work together or at least individually tag team a new menace. Is that necessarily a bad thing? Well, just as I've been saying over and over again regarding another set of Godzilla films, which will remain nameless if I can ever hack into Netflix and corrupt the data, it all comes down to the execution. I'm thinking Godzilla King of the Monsters 2019 will give us a better idea of how monsters team up, if they team up, in this world. And by extension, that might give us a better idea of whether or not Godzilla and Kong will do that. And we know for a fact that monster team-ups can work in these kinds of movies. They've happened in pretty much every era of the Godzilla franchise thus far. Heck, look back to the IDW comics. Godzilla Rulers of Earth ends, spoiler alert, with literally every single kaiju from the Godzilla pantheon that's still around at that point teaming up against a new, greater threat. It's an idea that sounds like some sort of cheesy Challenge of the Super Friends idea, but the way it plays out is absolutely epic. It's not completely perfect. There are so many monsters crammed into one space that some of them get lost in the shuffle, but it still comes very close to hitting the bullseye. Close enough that it counts for a lot. Then again, that book's finale also had the potential to backfire spectacularly and be one of the worst books ever had it been mishandled. Fortunately, it was placed in the right hands that time. So again, it all comes down to the execution. But I repeat, there is absolutely zero evidence at this point that Godzilla and Kong are going to team up at the end. I'll be keeping a sharp eye out for any evidence that might suggest otherwise, but for the moment, just cool your jets. Honestly, what intrigues me the most about this synopsis is that apparently Monarch is going to find more clues about where the Titans come from. Why I find that curious is because I kinda thought we already knew. Technically, the MonsterVerse hasn't gone into explicit detail on where the Titans come from, but they've always presented certain bits of evidence to suggest they are prehistoric superspecies. They existed before man and even before the dinosaurs. But of course, that was when the MonsterVerse was sticking with a far more naturalistic approach. We've been getting hints that King of the Monsters will be shifting things into a more mythological realm. So if there's more to these creatures than just being ancient superspecies, what on earth could that possibly be? You know, a while ago I speculated on the possibility of somehow incorporating Cthulhu into the MonsterVerse. It was pure speculation, of course, but even with that in mind, I've always felt that the MonsterVerse has been going for a semi-Lovecraftian sort of feeling. And of course, central to H.P. Lovecraft's Cthulhu mythos was the idea of ancient, gigantic, godlike creatures that roamed the earth long before mankind. That's pretty much exactly how the monsters of the MonsterVerse have been portrayed up to this point. Granted, they are not as unfeeling or uncaring as Lovecraft's great old ones, but there is a very clear similarity. So I can only wonder if this is hinting at further influence. Now, just as there is no evidence in this paragraph to suggest that Godzilla and Kong will team up, there's also no evidence to suggest any sort of Lovecraftian influence. Ergo, I will refrain from saying anything absolute in that regard. Even so, I do wonder. But anyway, that's the big news as Godzilla vs. Kong begins filming. So as always, you're free to leave your thoughts on these developments in the comments section below. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer signing off. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it as well as subscribe to the channel for more content of a similar nature. Also, check the description for links to our Twitter, DeviantArt, and Patreon pages, as well as the Amazon link for the novel Operation Red Dragon: The Daikaiju Wars Part 1, penned by yours truly. Thank you all, and we appreciate your support.